Hey everybody, this is episode 130 of the Paper Robots podcast. I'm your host, Logan Naugle, and this episode is with Heather Welch of Sunshine and Power Cuts. You might recognize that from being a podcast, a YouTube channel, a website. You might have seen her on Twitter, and Bandrew, actually from Podcastage and Geeks Rising, was on one of her episodes. I discovered her through Bandrew and through Geeks Rising, and immediately loved her podcast because it's about health and wellness through connecting with nature and off-the-grid living. And for a creator, and I think other creators out there, this podcast is really great because it reminds you to get out, decompress, like unplug, stop checking Twitter and everything, and enjoy nature and everything that it has to offer. I think it's really inspiring and reminds you to like breathe and help decompress. And it's something I use when I'm doing a walk or just trying to get out of a writer's block. So it was really fantastic talking to her. Yeah, we'll just get right into the show. I was so happy to have her on the podcast, and I tried not too much to get into a New Zealand accent or anything. I'll save that for next time we podcast together. Anyway, let's go with the theme song. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so first of all, thanks for being on my show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Secondly, congratulations on 6 years off the grid.
Thank you. That's quite an achievement.
It is. For better or worse, it seems like sometimes, but congratulations nonetheless.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then, yeah.
Yep. It's been hard, but I'm actually kind of looking forward to this winter to see how it's going to go because I've got the most storage I've ever had. So hopefully it'll be a good one.
And I feel like, and this is something we can like get into later in the show, but now like with having a podcast and a platform to talk about this stuff, do you kind of get excited to be like, what new challenges is like new content for the show?
Yeah, although it's getting a little bit easier now. So there was probably more stories if I'd started back when I first went off the grid because I only had one solar panel and one battery, and it was like really hard back then, whereas now it's kind of more normal.
Right, like you're like, I know what to do. You flip a thing, you hit the thing, and you walk outside. It's easy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we'll back up because in case anyone listening to my show doesn't know who you are, your name's Heather, and you do a podcast, Sunshine and Power Cuts, and it's about like off the grid living and being sunshine. And listening to your show has been super motivational, especially in this like gray, long winter that hasn't become spring here in Portland. So first of all, like that's been awesome because I like to walk around and I walk to my work because it's very close, but the gray weather is like, and like I said, like we said before we started recording, like I'm from the desert. I need the sun. I know how white I am, but I need the sun.
Yeah. I launched the podcast too back when it was just coming out of winter, and like I definitely get affected by the seasons, and I feel a lot lower in winter than I do when it's summertime and sunny and bright and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like called the SADS, like, right? I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
Seasonal affective disorder.
SADS. It's
sad.
It's such a silly. I like it though. Okay, well, and then also as we start the show, I need to first apologize in case I adopt your accent. I do this with my friends. I adopt mannerisms, and I've looked into it, and it's supposed to be something that is like empathetic. And it's like something some people do to like assimilate to the other person so that they don't feel awkward. But in reality, it kind of is like, are you mocking me? Are you?
I think it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Oh no. Okay. Well, also, I'm like way back in the show, I would just do silly voices, and I feel like I was like, oh no, I really hope I don't just slip into doing something, because I really like the way you say W. Yeah. For like your website. Yeah. Anyway, so that's neither here nor there. But I always give the guest like, give me your origin and give like the listeners of the show, like, what's your origin of your podcast, and then like we'll dive into it, and we kind of already hinted at what it is, but
yeah. So in August last year, I launched my podcast, which is called Sunshine and Power Cuts, and basically, I've been living off the power grid in New Zealand for the past 6 years. So I wanted to take some of those experiences and share them with people, and I had wanted to write a book about it in the beginning. And writing a book is really hard, and I wanted to connect with people in a different kind of way. And I thought podcasting was a really great way to do that. And it also helps because then I'm scripting episodes each week and kind of putting an effort into writing. And then I kind of made a unique thing and did 2 different types of episodes, because being off the grid, I kind of had to rely on nature a lot more. And like I said, seasonal affective disorder, that's something that I struggle with every winter. And it gets even harder when you're off the grid because you have less power and everything is harder to do that otherwise would be like the conveniences of being on the grid I don't have. So I've got the sunshine episodes, which are light, bright, and motivational, and then the power cut ones, which are the insights into living off the grid, which is how I draw on, well, it's kind of just the experience part, and the sunshine ones are drawing on nature for a bit of empowerment.
Yeah. And so I love that it's 2 different like segments. And like, I think like for listeners and stuff, like having these like kind of tight episodes and hyper focused it's something I've learned through doing, since I do such a long format show. It's kind of like having segments, I think, helps you get through it. Or like if you're commuting somewhere, it's like, oh, for you, it's like it's just this one episode, and then you can jump to the other episode on the way back. Or so having segments, I think, helps pace listeners, like kind of the psychological way of looking at it. But also, I love it, and I love that you separated. You chose background music for each one to also like separate it. Was that a conscious thing? Like, how much time did you spend going like, is this the song?
A little, not actually really that long. I kind of went through some music, and Porches and Universes is the one that I use for the sunshine episodes, and it's just one of the ones off the YouTube music thing library. Yeah. So I listened to that, and it was quite light and airy sounding, as well as it has, if you listen at the end, it's got the sounds of nature in the background. So that was really cool. And then I like kind of classical music, and so Moonlight Sonata is the one for the power cut episodes, because I don't make any power when there's moonlight at nighttime. So I thought that was quite a good connection for that episode as well. So yeah, but kind of wanted to
subtle things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think the background music it really sets the atmosphere for both types of episodes. And yeah, like immediately I was like, oh, I was like listening to the episodes and was like, oh my gosh, like all this, it makes so much sense that you separate them. Okay, so my first question would be about how you said this on like your first episode, also how you originally wanted it to be a book, or like you thought about writing a book. Is that something you would still do? Do you think, like, do you see like kind of like this memoir? You're like, hey patrons, what do you think? Like, now that, is that something you've thought about recently, or?
Yeah, so also every year I participate in NaNoWriMo, so I try and have a good solid go at writing. I don't do very well most of the time because I've got too many other things happening at the same time, but I would like to finish. I have draft chapters and things, and I would like to finish it and get it published. And it doesn't matter if no one else reads it. I just want to have it for myself. I think that would be amazing to have it written down.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the whole point of, like, you should write it for yourself. Anyway, I think that's the strongest, because also it's probably gonna be the best thing, like the best thing that you have, instead of being like, how do I craft this for the audience? And especially having this show being a template also to go off of. But there's those, like, all those other years of getting started that you can dive back into in a book and write and talk about the feelings of that, and then go like, oh, plus when you get to chapter 7, you can start listening to the podcast. Like,
yeah. I think it might have been handier to have written a proper blog like when I started, because then I would have that. But it was quite funny because some stuff on social media I was able to pull out, like things that I'd commented on certain days, and so I just recorded all those and fleshed them out a little bit more for the book. But yeah.
Yeah, and
Hopefully
I think
my memory doesn't fail me.
right, or like paint it differently. You're like, this was the worst, this was the best. But I think it's really interesting because here, like in the States, doing off the grid isn't. I don't think, as far as the research I've done, you can't like legally go completely off the grid. You can only do what you've talked about, like with your neighbors when you're supplementing and you're basically renting electricity. Like you're not allowed to fully disconnect, is what I've kind of looked into, because I was curious. And in Arizona, they actually have a really high like tax rebate for the solar panels because they're trying to get bigger investments. And I remember my mom's neighbor had done it, and they said it was after the third year it started to like actually pay off for them. But they can't fully, which kind of sucks that you can't. I romanticize the idea of like doing a fully off the grid and being like, yeah, that's it. I'm here. I'm on my own now.
I think when I first started talking to people about it, there was a lot of that romanticism thing. And part of the stuff that I've written down already is like, when you say to someone that you live off the grid, there's the people who will look at you kind of and their eyes glaze over and they imagine something because they've thought about it, and they imagine themselves somewhere in the woods or in a lovely field, and it's all sunshine and life is easy and slow and all of those good things. And then the reality of it is that sometimes it's quite hard, especially if you're trying to do like more of a homesteading thing where you're trying to grow your own food and do all this other stuff. It's a lot of effort and energy that you have to put into it, but so rewarding on the other side of that too.
Yeah, I think because also here in Portland, there's a lot of like gardening and like sharing and like co-opted gardens and things you can do. And it's like, everyone's like halfway there. They don't have the power, like they're not off the power grid, but they have this like garden, so they're making their own vegetables, or like they share this thing, or if you're like one of the million creators here, you live with 13 other people, and that's kind of like sharing rent. Yeah, I was fascinated by it, and I know listening to your show, I was like, oh yeah, I can't do it. I need my luxuries. I know me. Because you talked about when you go and visit and go to hotels and you're like, I'm gonna crank that thermostat. I do that too, and I'm not off the grid because I'm like, yeah, it's not my bill. Yeah. I'm just paying for the hotel for a night. Yeah, whatever I do tonight with my electricity, whatever.
I think, though, I did think about it a little bit more, and I'm probably still really conservative because it's a habit thing. Once you become conservative and you know that you have to switch everything off, I don't tend to use too much, but I do like having like extra long showers and turning the TV on and leaving it running instead of thinking, oh, I have to go and switch that off because it's wasting power while I'm not actually engaged watching it. So, yeah.
I imagine you're like, oh my gosh, you just bring extra things with you when you go in like on holiday, and you're like, just gonna bring in this lamp. I don't even need to plug it. I'm just plugging stuff in at this point. What do I need to charge? Yeah. Who needs a charge? Who needs a charge? Come here. Let's plug this in over here.
The flip side of that, though, is when people come and visit me at my house, it's like I have to remind them that they can't do all the things that they're probably expecting to do. Like I've had friends come and they want to use like hair straighteners and things like that, and they use it's a heating element, so it uses up quite a bit, and hair dryers and things like that. So yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, I would be like, okay, when we go to Heather's, you take your shoes off at the front door, and like just kind of just turn
and prepare for messy hair.
Yeah. Like have one of those crank flashlights.
Yeah.
No, your journey through doing this has been really fascinating. I think doing it for 6 years, kind of, it's like rewarding with the podcast. It's a commitment thing, and of course there's these ups and downs. But I think Kevin Smith talks about like doing like 50 episodes is like, if you can do that, because it'd be like an episode every week for a year, pretty much. So it's like the 1 year challenge he always puts out to people that are doing podcasts. And I think that's like a really interesting thing that, you know, you've been doing Off the Grid for 6 years. So this isn't just like, oh yeah, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try that new thing everyone's talking about. You're like, no, this is a real thing. And it started in, and I'll let you kind of talk about that, which once again, if you don't know, you can jump back to the beginning of Sunshine and Power Cuts. But we'll cover a little bit of the same ground where like you kind of fell into it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know whether that's really poor planning on my part or not, but had a section to build a house on, and the power wasn't on the site, and it was when I was looking at getting it connected, and the power company were like, well, you need to buy a transformer and you need to get cables under the road and up to the site, and it was going to be like 30 grand, and we just didn't have that money. So then it was like, well, the project was already happening. We were already kind of building, so we needed something, and going off the grid was an option, and we can do it here, which is awesome. And I'm pretty sure things have changed since we started. And that's kind of why I don't go too heavily into the tech side of things, just because what I've done is unique to my situation. Everyone can create something that is unique to them, or there are the grid tied systems, which are a whole other bag. So yeah, I just looked at what was out there, and we came across a really good supplier, and we decided to go off grid, and we started out small and committed to it because we still don't have 30 grand, so I can't get connected to the grid. But on the flip side of that too, though, like it's been really good because I'm not reliant on the grid. So when everyone else has a power cut around me, I'm not affected by that. And I mean, like people have asked, if I was given 30 grand today, would I get the power connected? And I kind of said no, because like I don't want to then be tied to it. So yeah, right. I mean, the convenience. Great, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, there's the convenience, but now that you had this like dabbling with it for this many years, it's like, oh wait, you know what? This is a pretty great thing, and to me, that's like I think we kind of stumble into what we want to do, like you were saying, like it was going to be a book, and then doing a podcast fell into place as being a better format, and it's kind of like the things you want, find like. It's like what we were talking about on the like podcast, like it's like you have this like mound of clay at all times in your head, and it starts to form as things that you can't control happen. It starts to form, and then you start to form it yourself, and it's kind of real. I've come to love the beauty of like the things are going to happen, and I'm just going to roll with it, and then sometimes I'm going to make sure that it goes this way. And then so I want to talk about now the sunshine part. We've talked about a lot of off the grid. Let's talk about the sunshine part. Because this is like I said, with SAD, and I think just being a creator and being in that kind of lifestyle, or people of any background, day job, whatever, kind of we get sucked into just having your screens and living in a box and just like grinding out the day. And like if it's like taking a walk with your dog, cooking a dinner for 3 hours or whatever, there's this really important thing to doing something cathartic, having a podcast where you talk about your feelings for hours, or you just ask a bunch of creators the questions that you want to know, and you pretend it's a podcast for everyone else.
Well, like you said, I think that wellness is something we all need to work on in whatever shape or form that takes. Some of us, we might be really motivated in things, and it might be other things that we need to work on. But for me, I struggle with well-being a lot. And like I said, I've suffered with seasonal affective disorders. So the winter times are hard, and having less daylight and less power, like in the terms of that, makes it harder. But I just wanted to, so basically the podcast also was for myself to help lift me up, and focusing on what lights me up and short motivational things that I could then share with other people and maybe help inspire them too. And it's been incredible, the feedback that I've had from people. And it's not people that I would have necessarily thought might listen either, because my target audience, if you want to talk about that, was like someone like myself. And I think I've got a whole other audience that I'm reaching, just because it's easy to listen to. I've had people say they like the sound of my voice, which is really nice.
No, it's definitely like, it's soothing, and it's nice with the like sound and atmosphere. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go walk around for 6 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
That was on purpose, like you said about the music thing. I chose and decided to do that on purpose. And I actually have a friend who knows me quite well, and she said that sounds nothing like you. So I don't know, but yeah, they lift me up, and just a little short message, because I know everybody's busy and we are all wired and connected, and I know that still probably listening to a podcast is being wired, but it's not video either, so it's, you can take it wherever you are and listen at whatever time. Although again, I've had someone say they don't want to listen while they're driving because it's too melodic and might put them to sleep. So be safe while you're driving. But yeah, I really enjoy the podcast side of it. I think it's creative. I'm a really creative person, and being able to share that and have that kind of connection with people on a quite a close level is really awesome.
Yeah. So okay. So my question is, what is your light routine? Letting the light in routine right now, like currently, especially guys like heading into like autumn and winter for you. Like for me, it's just waiting out this long winter for this, like for those flowers to blossom and letting nature take its course. So I don't even need a routine. I just got to wait it out. But like, what's yours? Like heading into a winter?
It's kind of what I put into the 7 days of sunshine thing, because I had to look at what would light me up and what would get me through. So I kind of try and make sure I have a structured daily routine, and that is trying to get up early, because when you rise with the sun, you can go to bed earlier, but I'm still a night owl, so that doesn't really work for me.
Yeah.
But also just, I know what things I really enjoy and I try and make time for them. So one of those is connecting with people, and I have a call that I have weekly with a friend, and I live out in the countryside, so I don't get to see a lot of people all the time. So that's quite an important thing I need to do. And then going outside when it is sunny, and then listening to music or doing other things that I enjoy when I can't go out, and like if the weather's terrible or I'm unwell or something, that help lift me up. And stopping and being in awe of things, because like for Earth Hour, which happened last month, I sort of went out and looked at the smallest details I could find in nature, because it's amazing, like out there.
Wait, what's Earth Hour?
Oh, every year they kind of, people around the world switch off for an hour, switch off your lights and stuff. And it's kind of, I don't know how much conservation of power or energy it does, but it's kind of just to help keep the conversation going about conservation and our environment and things like that. So I'm off the grid anyway, but I switched off and went outside and spent some time out in nature. So yeah.
Oh man, I feel so bad. I don't know what that is. I'm such an American. I'm like, oh, what do you mean turn off a power for an hour? No, no, I think like that's really awesome. Now I'm gonna make sure I participate.
So it's in March 2019, and it's just, I think it's the 30th of March at 8:30 to 9:30 p.m., whatever your local time is.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just start sleeping. I'll just take a nap. Because up here in Portland, it'll still be dark out anyway, and I'll be like, all right, it's hibernation time still. Well, okay, I wanted to talk, because you talked about national, like November, the book writing month, and like being creative, and starting like wanting to do a book and writing. So what else are you doing? Yeah, like creatively, like what's kind of your passion? Because like I don't know, we all have so many things we do. And
yeah, I really like poetry. So poetry is something I've done from when I was a lot younger, and writing. The podcast is one. And then I like supporting other people. So I have a full-time job as well. And I like to make music. I'm not very good at it, but I like singing, and I used to play the flute, and so I've got that, and sometimes bring it out and play it. So yeah.
Oh, sweet. I don't own it. I used to play saxophone and bass guitar. Bass very poorly. I'd like to think I was okay at saxophone. We'll have to I'll get a saxophone. We'll live stream both of us poorly playing music.
Yeah, it might not be good.
It'll be like bad connection. I'll know half the notes. It'll be like Mary Had a Little Lamb.
But it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Yeah.
So would you ever like want to do a poetry book? Is that something you're also working towards?
I have a poem that's published.
I'm trying to get all the scoops.
Yeah, I have one poem that's published in a poetry book already. And then I just have like a collection that I've written for myself. And I thought about possibly publishing some more, but I haven't worked on that for a long time, really. It's just something that I journal stuff, rather than doing poetry, and I wouldn't really want to share that everywhere, I guess.
What's your other writing like then?
It used to be like just short stories, and that's why I kind of chose a short format podcast, is because I really like keeping things short and sweet, and just random things. I'd pick a random idea and then develop it and see where it would go. And I like reading kind of science fiction and things like that, so they kind of were a bit on the same kind of note. Yeah.
Okay. You're like, I don't know, hard sci-fi, something Tolkien-esque, just like
maybe not to that level, but I used to write a lot about like fairies and stuff and different things. So yeah.
And then I do have a New Zealand question. It's are you afraid of getting too popular because like the whole tall poppies thing? Like, do you have friends that like is that a true thing?
New Zealand has got a thing for tall poppy syndrome. So like when we were at school, it was a big thing and people would pull you down when you got up there. I think that it's hard, like if in terms of podcasting, there aren't that many people here doing it. And if there are, I don't know all of them. And I think it would be better if there were more so that we could hang out and we could talk and stuff, because everyone that I talk to is either in the States or somewhere really far away. And so I've got to rely on video calls and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know if I'm worried about being too out there. I mean, I didn't really share what I was doing with too many people who know me just because I was afraid of what they might think. But I didn't want it to be a flop either. I didn't want it to like push it out there and go, hey, I'm amazing and I'm doing this podcast. You should listen to it, and then not get very far. And they'd be like, well, that was rubbish. You know?
Yeah.
I don't really like to toot my own horn anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. I just like, cause I know like that's a thing. So I was like, curious. I'm like, I don't know, like local news picks up that local podcaster, and all of a sudden just like tall poppy syndrome. Everyone's like, who do you think you are? Just because you have a microphone, just because you live off the grid, just because you don't need us.
I kind of noticed that with other things though. So not necessarily people I was interacting with, but in certain groups and things, there were like the people who they either think one way about being off the grid and they're like, well, how are you making a podcast if you're off the grid? And it's kind of like, well, I'm not off the grid and like a hermit. I just have alternative power. So that's been interesting, and kind of I'm trying to craft my message better so that it's more understandable where I'm coming from. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah. I'm waiting for like in 5 years for Bandrew to roll out another podcast called Bandrew Shines and Power Cuts. And it's just, he finally moved because they finally rolled out some high speed internet to the mountains somewhere. And then he's like, I live somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. And I like kind of, there's like that scene in Wolverine, like Logan, where he like comes down from the mountain to get like a beer, or like in Breaking Bad, he goes into town to make the one phone call and then goes back. Yeah, that's how I imagine, like in my head, that's Bandrew. That's like future Bandrew for me.
Yeah, I think that's his dream, and I hope that he gets there, because it's like solitude is great, and isolation and being out somewhere where there's no one else. I mean, I'm not really like that, because I've said in the podcast, I kind of live in rural suburbia. There's quite a few houses around me. It's just that there wasn't power to my side, but I love going out as well. And I think that the funny side of that is though that he needs the high speed internet. So he'll be still connected. He'll be just sort of a bit more isolated.
Yeah. He'll be arguably more connected than he's ever been, because he'll be like, oh, finally, I don't need to go out in the world. It's all here. There's that Amazon drone and this internet, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then, or someone like, he'll get internet famous and someone will dox him and he'll like, I have to start over. I'm moving to New Zealand.
I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, it'd be great if he came to visit, but I hope he doesn't get doxed.
No, I don't think he will. I just like have a picture of him back here. No, here's his known location. No, it's hard. Getting ready to send like save the dates and things for Cynthia and I's upcoming wedding.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. I have to like ask Bander like, hey, what carrier pigeon can I send this to you on?
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know what you mean. I don't exist.
Yeah.
I have a kind of interesting question. If like I've gotten into like prepping for conventions for like Comic-Cons and doing stuff for that like in the future and looking ahead. I've got really, and I've talked about this before, but I get really into like EDC and like daily carry like backpack stuff and how to maximize like traveling and flying. And so like I've deep dived this guy Chase Reeves, and he like does bag reviews, and they're so, because he's a really good really good persona. Mm-hmm. And I really like what he does, and I've fallen in love with like researching bags and be like, I would, if it was rainy, I'd put this one on, and if I need 3 laptops, which I'll never have, I would use that one. Do you have an everyday carry or anything with like when you do go on holiday?
I pack fairly light, and I don't know whether that's got anything to do with anything, but I have, when I did the Sunshine Summit recently, I have this really good bag that fit pretty much everything in it except that my computer, because I had to take that with me. And I just generally fly or travel with the smallest one of those carry-on luggage bags that are like the zip up, and mine has wheels so I can wheel it around. But yeah, I travel light.
What are your like essentials? What can't you not take with you? And like would be bringing like a Zoom with you like be a part of like future? One. Yeah, well, I mean, Patreons. You heard her.
Yeah, if I had one, I would, and I would definitely take a microphone with me. And I have a little, I have it here. I have a little, where's the thing? A little recorder thing, and so I've taken that with me on holiday. It's like a Sony IC recorder or something, and I've recorded like birdsong when I've been out in the forest and stuff, and that's really cool. And just found it recently and got to listen back to those. But essentials. I'm a planner, so I usually have like a notebook or something where I've already mapped out what I'm going to do and things, and make sure all my documents are in order, and just like clothing stuff. I keep it so that I've got options for all the different weathers that I might encounter.
Yeah. And then, so also on that note, is there like any places you want to go, like maybe not for work or just vacation, but for like where do you want to like have the podcast and like this new outlet take you? I mean, because I feel like with all the like guest spots you've already done, and not to toot your own horn, but credit where credit's due, like you've had guest spots and talking to other podcasters and growing that, and with their now there's that podcast summit thing in Seattle. I think it was back in March. Someone will tell me. Like, are those things you think about, or like flying all the way over here, or doing those things?
I would love to come to the States. I mean, like I said, most of the people that I talk to are in the States, and I would love to come and meet you all. I think it would be amazing. And I thought more about whether I wanted to do like a convention or a conferencey thing, and I'm not too sure about that because I'm not sure. I'm just not sure, but I would love to do like meetups. And so Emily Prokop from the Story Behind podcast, she's writing a book about her podcast, and she's going to do like a book launch that is meetups with other people or her fans and stuff. And I think that would be amazing. But again, I'm a planner, so I've already looked at the States, and you guys are all over the place. The country is so big. So it would take me ages, but I would love to do it. I'd love to go across and sort of come back and see everybody. And I went to Europe when I was younger, and I would love to go back there and travel around Europe again. So, yeah.
Well, here's an idea. I don't know what the loan program is or grant, but so Neil Gaiman, when he wrote American Gods, he basically pitched, he's like, I have this book, but you have to send me and give me allotted money to tour America because the book is about touring America and gods and all this stuff. And he talks about how like that's how he proposed it, so he could go visit all these places and write about America and stuff. So Sunshine and Power Cuts, the book, like the memoir.
On tour.
Yeah, the podcast on tour.
Yeah.
Just like you could use that as an excuse and like life experience to do a book and like help like facilitate those creative things. Of course, having day jobs like all of us do it's not always it's a pie in the sky thing, I realize, but I think you could do it.
Yeah, I would love to. I think it would be amazing. And I wanted to do for the podcast itself, I want to take it a bit further, and possibly in 2019 I want to do a Sunshine and Power Cuts retreat, so a kind of an off-grid experience for people, and we could hang out and stuff. But yeah, I would love to do a Sunshine Summit where I was international, and yeah, I think that would be awesome.
Where do you want to go, like that you haven't been yet? I know that's a very broad, like top three.
Top three. I kind of wanted to go to Japan. Like I studied Japanese at high school, so I would love to go to Japan, and I've never been there. I want to go to Croatia is another place. I don't know if that counts as Europe. And maybe Africa. Yeah.
That's really cool.
In Africa.
Yeah. Yeah. Japan fascinates me. I would love to go there. And luckily at this point, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, Cynthia does toy design. I do the comics and the podcast. If there's a way to put it in like, okay, we can do a convention there and then just take a couple extra days. And like, that's kind of how I'd like to, because that you kind of have to plan, because applications are like 6 to 8 months ahead for these conventions, and money's always the problem. Yeah. But it's like, okay, how do we maximize and make it all work out? And I think that's kind of how I'd love to see the world moving forward. I remember in college, I was like, oh man, I want to backpack and I'm going to do the like work exchange thing. And I was looking, I was like, oh wait, everything's kind of far apart for where I want to zigzag.
Yeah. I didn't get to do that. I didn't really do an OE or overseas experience thing. I was really fortunate when I was at high school. I got to go to England and Italy on a choir trip. So I kind of had that experience, and then my family traveled, so I got to go to Australia and New Caledonia and things like that when I was younger. So I love traveling. Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to bring up, since we've mentioned it, like Patreon, like starting that, what's that experience been like as someone who doesn't have one, and like coming from Banjo, who talks about diversifying your income streams and having that platform and being able to go like, hey, if I do want to do a book, or if I do want this extra content, there's already kind of an audience and like a venue for that.
For me, it was because I hadn't started the podcast first. I had Sunshine and Power Cuts just as itself before that. So I wanted to do like a membership thing where people could join me and go through like a 28-day challenge or something and have like incredible resources in it. And then I was looking at platforms on how to provide that, and it was a nightmare. Like, you either had to sign up with something that was already done or build one yourself on your website, and it didn't really fit. And then when I got the podcast going, I kind of wanted the ability to provide different content things for people and make it kind of like a membership thing that way. So Patreon has been really great. It was a challenge when they decided they were going to change it at the end of last year, because that put a lot of people off. And I also had the idea that if I just started it from the beginning, my goal is to grow the community. I'm not interested in how much money I make out of it. It's just, if someone wants to support me, I'm truly grateful for that, and it'll be really helpful. So my goals are based on the number of people that I have there, and then offering the different content at those different levels, because I did put a lot of work into them. So, the flip side of that. And I've been really lucky. Like, I don't have a huge audience, but I've grown my Patreon and I've had it for 6 months, I think, and I've grown at least one new patron each month, and I've lost some, but it's been growing, and yeah, totally grateful for each and every one of them.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and like since you are such a planner, it's one of the things where like, okay, how do you facilitate all those? Like, what are your goals? What are the targets? What are the things? But with the format of Sunshine and Power Cuts and what you're trying to do, which is first and foremost community, and it's like community through a free podcast, community through Patreon has a thing where it's built in to become a community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, anyone who does sign up knows what they're signing up for versus like someone clicking on your site. And then like you're saying, having all these built-in things that aren't really designed for that. And I think another thing was Discord seems to only be growing, especially as like things like Facebook and Facebook groups, and the world falls apart. It's good that there's like other avenues like Discord and Twitch and Patreon.
I love Discord. I'm on the bandwagon for Discord. Like, I have one for Sunshine and Power Cuts, and I just love the fact that it has, like, in a group on Facebook, I could go live to everybody, but you can't interact with me. You can only type a comment or send me hearts and likes and whatever, but in Discord, I can hop on a voice chat and we can talk to each other. And again, the same thing with the Patreon thing. It integrates with Discord, so you can have set areas or extra things that you can provide in Discord for them. And yeah, it makes that whole membership thing easy, and it's a proper way of really connecting with people. And I mean, in Bandrew's one, there is generally a voice chat each week, and I really look forward to that because there's amazing people there, and I love hearing from them.
Yeah, there's this movie called like The Image Revolution about Image Comics, and it talks and then one of the creators like did a follow-up one with Warren Ellis, and he was a comic creator, and he had his own kind of like mail site, like where you just type in there, and it was its own community, like way back like GeoCities days. And two creators that are now like top two, Matt Fraction and Kelly Sue, met in his community and are now married and like powerhouse comic creators. Wow. And it's so fascinating because like now we have it's just really interesting to have like Facebook, which is like this huge social media, and like that it dissolved all those like smaller avenues, but then all of a sudden Discord comes up and it's like a new old thing. Yeah. And because it is private and it's more intimate and it's like community driven again, and I think it's really interesting, and it's something I'm starting to look into. And like honestly, it's just I get all these like pie in the sky ideas and then go like, okay, you're writing 3 books, you're doing a weekly podcast, you're gonna have a wedding, let's maybe not add 10 more things.
Yeah. You don't want to string yourself out too thin. And I mean, when your focus goes, your energy flows. And like I've had a bit of a break, and the podcast episodes have been a little bit few and far between since the Sunshine Summit, because that was an incredible event, but it was also then life happened and things got a bit hard, and you kind of have to really be careful what you take on so that because creativity takes up a lot of energy and your personal resources. So making sure that you're not spread too thin so you can keep doing that. But with having things like where your community can be, or just having that connection with people in that way, voice chat or whatever it is that's something that lights me up too, and that I look forward to, and it helps. It helps with that. But yeah, definitely not taking on too much.
Yeah. And I really like the idea of Discord also, because like you're saying, so much of like what I ask creators when I have them on is what do you do for your writer's block or your creative block when you hit those, or when you come home from your day job and you're too tired to start your project? Like what is that unwind routine or that warm-up routine? Because I think those are crucial, and I think there's a million ways to do it, and I'm always fascinated what someone else's thing is. And now, like, I can say part of mine is like listening to your episodes. It's like a reminder. I try to always analogies to like having to work out, because I don't want to do it, but then I'm like, it's gonna pay off, and it just starts by like repetition, and it's like, oh yeah, like no one's good at doing anything right away, and so having like a podcast like yours to remind you to breathe and like, oh wait, okay, maybe don't just come home with all the baggage of work and immediately try to go do something that is also mentally heavy and something that you started doing like writing or podcasting. It comes from a place of love, so maybe try to get back into that place before you start again.
One thing that I struggle with is like doing the social media content. Like I like creating, but sometimes it seems like a bit of a chore. And so instead I'll either, like if it's working on the computer, I'll actually turn my chair around and face the other way and do drawing or coloring in or something completely different, or hop on a voice chat and talk to someone so that I'm not just sitting here by myself with my thoughts going through my head, or listening to music or doing something else. And I think like, I draw on all sorts of different things at different times to help move through those tough times. And then it could be like reading a book or something that's not even relevant, like totally distracting and taking away, or just being still and listening. Like in the last live stream with Banjo, I said when I go out like and do walks, I take my phone to take photos, but I don't take podcasts or anything like that. I just listen to the world around me because I need to switch right off. Like that's something I found I need to do for me.
Yeah. And I alternate like in the morning. Sometimes I need a podcast or music while I walk to work. It's 6-minute walk. But I need something to kind of like, I'm like zombie walking to work. Like, especially like right now when I'm like bundled up and it's like, but I sometimes, especially like when it's spring and summer, it's like, oh, I just want to enjoy the 6 minutes of like kind of the dew and the sun cracking and like the subtle sounds, especially if I'm walking early enough that there isn't that work traffic on like any of the main roads, and then walking back from work, sometimes it's like I just need to just like almost close my eyes and not listen to any, like just silence while you walk home to decompress. But then when it comes to creating, I'll just sit there and I like play like threes on my phone because I'll be like, I need to write. Well, wait, if I use this, it's almost like your brain starts problem solving in your head, like the writing problem or the editing thing. And then I can like you're saying, like I turn around and do something else. And then it helps me get back on track.
Yeah. I've taken other prompts too, like changing like I live way out of town. So trying to change the way I drive home helps get me a bit creative because you see different things and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of things you can do.
Yeah. For November, like the writing thing, are you going to be participating this year?
Yeah. I don't know how well I'll do. I don't put pressure on myself.
Yeah.
And maybe I should put pressure on myself though to try and achieve something. But I kind of like my creative thing is I feel like I do need a deadline. But at the same time I need it to be flexible enough that I'm gonna write something that I'm happy with, and I think that's just taking action, because if I could procrastinate till kingdom come, I'm really good at it. So I need a little bit of motivation.
I like that's why I like to schedule. Like I'm not a big planner because I like the idea of the procrastination, but that's why I like deadlines where it's just far enough that, okay, I have this thing I need to get done. Like there is a target there, but it needs to be wide enough that I can do this. You can like zigzag, you can kind of leisure. And I really like this year, I think I'm going to try to participate, but I'm looking at it as however many pages I write is something I might not have done it. It might have been 0 if I didn't join like the activity. And I think that's a healthy way to look at it. And then, because of course, I mean, if you're writing, and when you're sitting there, you're doing it, and that's better than all the other times you weren't or whatever. So
yeah, I think scheduling it in does help because you kind of get in a routine, and you may not have ideas at that particular moment, but if you're in the habit of doing it, it probably helps. And then, like I've mentioned before, that I'm fairly flexible with my time, and that at the moment comes from having to schedule my life around how much power I've got. So I tend to have slightly more flexible time things, but then other things I definitely have a set time where I do them. So it is a give and a take, and if you want to achieve something, you've definitely got to make time for it and do it.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to like wrap up and let me know. I'm very curious. Like, I had like one more question, which was like to the power grid, because I thought it was really interesting on one of your episodes. You said, like, because I find it interesting with like writing and stuff and editing a podcast. You talk about your setup and how it's not for everyone, and something you talk about in your show about, look, if you want to join off the grid, like, you don't have to copy and paste what I'm doing. It works for me, and it's what I had to make at the time.
Yeah.
And you've kind of Frankensteined certain things. And I was curious, because I see this with like some artists where they find shortcuts and tips and tricks like in Photoshop, and they're like, this is like such a clunky way to do it, but it's like it's the demon I know.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to stick to it. Like, do you feel that way sometimes where like people are like, well, you could just switch to automated blah, blah, blah. And you're like,
yeah,
but it's like, this is the beast I know.
It's partly that, but it's also like, if I wanted to add all the cool tech things and to make it easier, I got to pay for them. They're not free. So like the whole concept with our one was there wasn't the funds to do the big project of getting connected to the grid. And in order to get through and start small, we had to keep it simple. And so we've kept it simple the whole way through. Then there's less things that could go wrong. And also there's more control over it. So I don't have an automatic start on my generator, for example, which might be quite handy. But what that would do is if the batteries got to a certain level, it would automatically turn on. But it doesn't account for what the weather's doing outside and my judgment going, well, actually, I might not have to be home this afternoon, so I can just let it do it on its own. I don't need it to waste fuel and charge the batteries for me. So, yeah, I could do all sorts of different things, and sometimes that's what I struggle with. The wellness side of it is I get caught up in how difficult it is, which is why I need to remind myself of the good things and be motivated, because not having power is pretty demotivating. So, yeah, I guess I have my way, and that's the way it is. And like the other thing, I can't change my system either because of the cost. So I kind of have to roll with it until I do replace it.
Well, first of all, I hope that coming into this winter, you have plenty of firewood and you're able to do plenty of like grilling and cooking and everything. And yeah, I hope that like this is really interesting. And worst case scenario, it's better content for the listeners.
Yeah. And then maybe if I work it out, I can have a break from it and come and visit the US.
Exactly. See, that's the goal. That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. Seriously, thanks for being on the show. I'm curious, like, what are you consuming right now? It's something I'm trying to ask my guests is like, what's something like right now you're like loving, whether it's TV show, a book, like a podcast, maybe that's like new. And I know you do a lot of this stuff on Twitter, because that's why I also like want to have you like promote yourself there. Like what, because you're very active on Twitter. If you're not, or if people aren't already in your Discord, I think Twitter, you're really active about sharing, especially sharing things. But what are some other stuff, like just as a human being who's like, man, I'm really into this.
I really am enjoying Audible books. So a couple of the ones that I have on my playlist at the moment are The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins and Braving the Wilderness, which I still haven't finished. I'm getting through that one slowly. And I'm mainly just listening to music, and that is letting like random playlists and things. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
What kind of music are you listening to?
I started off with like back when the Sunshine Summit was happening, I was listening to Oh Honey, and then from there suggestions came up, or Spotify recommended stuff, and so it's just flowing on from that. They're kind of quite upbeat and stuff.
Oh, right on. Have you read American Gods? Because it's a great audiobook if you have not.
I haven't.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman's stuff is like really good, and it's really interesting. And like some of the cast that's like in that TV show that happened, like was doing voice acting in the book first. It's a really good audiobook. I highly recommend it. Once you get through your long list of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and pretty much you can be found anywhere at Sun Power Pod, Sunshine and Power Cuts. Like what would you say you're most active on?
Probably Instagram and Twitter at SunPowerPod, and then the Discord server, which is you can find in the show notes of my show, and you can find the show on Spotify and all the good places. So
Yeah, and I'll have all that linked down below, also in the description. So seriously, thank you so much for doing this. This was really fascinating for me. It was really fun, and I think listeners of this show should check out your podcast as cathartic, like the sunshine, reminding yourself to take a break. You're already listening to a podcast, so you're probably already knowing that you need to drown out something. So remember just to soak in the sun and soak in some positive vibrations. Thank you so much for being on the show, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.